one sentence, how would I describe today? I'd describe today eventful, information-packed, and beneficial.
Thank you guys for joining. This is really exciting to put some light on parts, and hopefully we can have some fun with it. So, first of all, I kind of want to show of hands, how did I want to ask this question? Because I just threw it in. Size of inventory, like, who has $1 million in parts? Was 400,000. It's okay, like, I'm just trying to put it out there. So, Ferjie, you have about 1.7. Carlos, you have about 450. The perspective I want to put before we get into the conversation is these are dollars that the dealer owns. It's one of the largest investments in the dealership, and that's why I'm excited to have this conversation and just kind of put some light on this, because service is growing, everything is growing, but how do we keep up with that? So I'm going to start with just talking about, and there's so many things. How can we keep up with it? How can parts keep up and not, I don't want to say hold back the service department, but I think that's kind of the perception that happens, is like, we're busy really fast, you don't have the parts that they need sometimes. I'm not saying you guys, I'm just saying in general. So talk through some of the things that you guys do in your stores to keep up with the service department and the growth. Whoever wants to go first.
At least over at our dealer, what we try to do to keep up with the service department is we use the UpdatePromise program. We try to do the best we can with tagging on sale, right? Trying to stay on top of the current trend. The current trend this month might not be the current trend 3 months from now. So it really depends, with the recalls that are going on. A lot of those things are a bit specific to content, so can't be proactive ahead of time. But once they allow us to order freely, then we try to get that as we can. Other than that, just having good line of communication with the service department and with all the other departments.
To turn this off. I know there was echoing. I'm good, okay. No, that was a good point. So, Ferjie, with you guys having a larger inventory, you also have a warehouse too that you're dealing with?
Yeah, so our building is actually, it's kind of weird. It's separated by 3 different buildings. So we have 2 split warehouses with a mezzanine that goes on top. So for us, the best thing that I implemented is more communication, but also better communication with the service drive. It's not enough to talk to the service manager. I actually try to speak with all the advisors and even the porters to see which vehicles come in, because that will dictate, what I need to stock ahead of time if I need to. And everybody's market is different. One market might be, like if you go up north, it might be more truck heavy. If you go down south, it might be more for our brand specifically for Jeeps. It might be more Jeeps or sedans. So we try to tailor it depending on what goes through the drive. And also watching on our side the trend of all the stuff that could be potentially breaking down, or cars that are brand new models that get maybe like a couple months aged. And we'll notice in trends which ones are the ones that are needed the most per job, so that way we don't have any downtime for the technicians. That's really what does it a lot. Is all these parts for one job, that's a common problem, and then you're missing tools. And then you have to figure out, all right, can we force order it and increase profitability for both parts and service if we have to make time just to get one small thing to finish it.
So you're using more communication to pick up on those things than looking at data?
I try to encourage all the guys to talk with everybody on the service drive, not just the service advisor for this particular vehicle. If they notice a trend of something that we should be stocking, then I'll look at the data that our manufacturer is sending to us, and also the sales history on all the vehicles coming to the drive, so that way I can kind of judge if I need to order more for like this quarter or less than this quarter.
Yeah, I think when we were talking earlier, just the perspective of how much data a parts manager has to look at to make a decision, because there's so many parts when it comes to the health of the inventory And I think what's the metric of you made 80% of your profit on 20% of your inventory? Yeah, so, and then there's the obsolescence topic, which I think we're gonna get into, but did you wanna add to that? No? Okay, that's not helpful. Okay, so where do I want to go with this? So, yeah, let's talk about the productive inventory, which I kind of already led into that, and what that looks like, and what are some of the metrics that you feel like are overly just kind of useless? Like, it's industry standard, these are metrics, and why do we follow these metrics? And what are the better metrics to use, I guess, is what I'm trying to get to. Any perspectives on that?
Better metrics, like overrated ones?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. Or, yeah, overrated metrics or just metrics that you follow to keep a better pulse on productive inventory, the health of your inventory. What are some?
For me, one overrated metric is anything that has to do with wholesale revenue, specifically. Just because, you have so many, collision shops, body shops in the house, that you have to be really careful about what they're purchasing, because that might not always reflect what you should keep in inventory. There might be like a string of around 1,500 doors that you have to order, but then the next month you will have to decide whether you want to keep 10 or not. And that also affects everything. It affects space in the dealership. It affects the technicians. It really affects a lot. Having overage and obsolescence of inventory doesn't help really anybody.
What's one change that you've made in your inventory to work with you instead of against you? I know for your example, you've recently taken over, and this happens so much, taking over and then just this massive obsolescence issue. So what are some of the things that you put into action to improve that? And how long? Remind me of the time frame.
This one, so I had been with this company since last May, and the first thing we did to implement push basically for service was to make sure that the location of everything in the warehouse made sense. So because that's one of the things I encourage service managers and owners is look at the warehouse and see how everything's laid out, because it doesn't make any sense if you have a bigger facility to have huge parts upstairs tucked in the back, because if technicians looking for a part, it's going to take forever, and that time's money. So you're trying to get it as fast as you can. So second, if you have open lines of communication between the parts department and service, it makes it way easier for everybody who has a question. They can figure out an answer in about 5 minutes, and that could be anything from a wheel or a new build, or it could be a customer car down, or if you need to have a specific part. Having everything in the right place, so that way anybody in the dealership can go to the department and locate it and tell where it is in close to 5 minutes is really what you're trying to do.
And so when you got there, that was the biggest first step, was just getting organized physically.
Getting organized. It's like having, like your floor units. If you have a bunch of cars all over the place, it makes it hard to find something. You have it, in specific areas, or if generally where everything's located, it's a lot easier to, see offhand if you can answer a question from a customer. Because if you don't answer a question from a customer in a relatively quick amount of time, we'll just move on to the next person, and you want to capture that as fast as you can.
I'll come back to that. So let's talk about idle inventory and just the cost of that, and just what would you say the number one cause of obsolescence is? And first, let's define obsolescence, because I think there's idle inventory, which is idle, but then there's actual obsolescence, which is 0% chance of selling. So what would you say is the number one cause of that? And 13 months no sale, 13 months no receipt, just to define obsolescence. Unless there's another view.
I think the biggest cause of having obsolescence, follow through from whether it's the parts department not calling a wholesale customer or a retail customer, or whether it's the service department not following up with one of their customers. Maybe they don't see the value of what they're getting. right? So for us, when I took over, the biggest issue we had was main control parts, so like seatbelts and stuff like that. They were 100% not returned. So what we did is we kind of put a check and balance in place where, granted, it's a little bit different if it's warranty. Can't charge the customer, but if it's a retail or a wholesale, what we do is we just make the customer at 100%, or we're 100% transparent with them. Once they put the part there, then the customer comes back and it's there. We just have a strict return policy. It's still over counter tickets and all that stuff. But on some of the stuff that's for warranty service department, we do have X amount of days to send it back. So if we don't see any activity or if they can't get a hold of the customer, then we'll just send it right back. They'll know, and if they need it, order it back.
I turned it off. Echo. So it sounds like just having clear ownership. I think, right? Special orders, that's a big cause of obsolescence. So clear ownership of that. And Ferjie, do you have anything to add on, number one cause?
Yeah, with obsolescence, it's one of those things where it's a term that makes sense for the parts department, but when you try to explain it to all the other departments, it's really efficiency with what the tech can do inside the service department. So for us, our biggest issue with obsolescence is for a warranty, specifically like a warranty repair and a technician over order. And it does affect the service department, but they can bring it back. That's not a problem. But when it gets into our hands, we just want to make sure that it's something, if we should keep it or not. And that's where our due diligence comes in to try to figure out if it's something that we should keep in case another car has the same issue, or if we should send it back, however it means, either back to the manufacturer or try to sell it somewhere else. It's a crazy juggling act, but it's one of those things where you have to keep both lines of communication. And also too, if the customer orders a part and they take off, we have to work together to try to get the customer back in, because again, you want that retention. So it's not enough to say, I go to service or I go to the tech and be like, hey, you ordered this part for this customer, they never come back. You kind of have to guide it along and ask the service advisor too, like, hey, is there anything we can do to get this customer back? We have a special part that they needed for the vehicle to be recommended. I don't want to send it back just in case they come back and that they like CSI or something. So try to figure out all angles to try to get rid of obsolescence, but usually the main culprit is over-ordering on warranty repairs and also too for wholesale, because they're dictated by a lot of insurance stuff. So once an insurance claim comes in, they give you a full list of parts, and you're at their mercy. You can choose, and you try to go which you can when they return.
So the techs are the problem. Service is the problem. Trying to make fun of it.
That's
No, I know. So we're saying that, but what are some things that you guys do to help make technicians happier, to control this more efficiently, to make sure they feel supported and you're getting the right part, but then, like you mentioned, getting it out of your inventory as quickly as possible. What are some things that you guys do for the people, for the tech service advisors, to get them to see your side of what you're, in charge of and controlling?
It's really just talking to the parts guys, making sure that they know, if they're pointing out a job, that both the parts person and the technician know, which repairs, what needs to be done, if there's extra stuff we need to add on or stuff to take off. Them being able to speak freely without having to worry about, we'll just order everything and see what happens. I think you should be able to at least spend a good amount of time to try to figure out if the vehicle really needs it. Because in the worst case scenario, you over-order stuff and then the car comes back as a comeback. That's worst case scenario. So that, you're stuck with obsolete inventory, the technician has to redo the job, it's just a mess. So I'm going to try to get it done all the first time.
I was just going to say that's something that we kind of deal with there every now and then, where they're not sure and they'll say, hey, let me get everything here. No, we don't want to do that. Double check or there's nothing wrong with that, right? If you're not sure. But every day in the morning, we'll email each individual advisor and the service manager their special order items that came in, and then they're itemized with a dollar amount. So they might see hey, I only have 4 pieces, but when they realize those 4 pieces out of the, say, 50 grand, and it kind of like fire, and they're like, oh no, this is a lot of money to do something with this. So, and then along with that, we still walk it over to them, and so they have an email copy and they have a paper copy in their hand. Everything's kind of done.
Yeah, that's a good process. Over communicating, putting the dollars into perspective. So a parts manager's role has evolved, I feel like, a lot in the last, I mean, I started in this business, over 10 years ago, I don't know. It's evolved a lot. And I can always tell when I'm talking to a parts manager, I can tell the really good ones, and I can always tell too by their desk and the way that the parts department is organized. But so what do parts managers actually need today to do their job better and to better support the drive and the business? What do you guys actually need more of?
I mean, in a nutshell, asking me, I just think that we just need to better communicate, not just with the service department, but with, if you have a collision center, and with new car, used car, even with the retail customers. It's just communicate. As long as we communicate, and as long as the people in the parts department are good at leaving detailed notes, so that if I'm not there on Monday, or say for example today I'm not there today, I show up tomorrow, and there's a customer with special needs. As soon as I get their paperwork, I already automatically know, you know, this customer needs a call before this time. He's prepaid for these 3 parts, has them, but he's missing these 2 pieces. So the last thing you want to do is, whether it's a retail customer or a wholesale customer or a customer in the service department, you know, kind of look like we don't know what's going on. And I think if anything, that already sets the tone, like, oh, this place is lost. I don't know what's going on. So the more we know, the better, right? More
Communication and detail.
Communication is a really big thing. But also, too, one thing that was, there's an old saying, you can't teach a fish to fly. One thing with parts managers is that a lot of people think they're cave trolls.
They cave trolls?
Yeah.
That's the first one I heard.
Sit at the desk and they have a wall. Everybody here has seen a parts manager.
Yes, it's like a
They have
dungeon.
a giant wall of parts, you know, all over the place. So there are times where, you know, parts manager does have to get up, you know, what's going on with the warehouse, but also to encourage the parts manager to go out to the drive-thru. You know, it might be scary for them, but we'll do it. You know, we'll do it. Have them speak with the customers. Have them talk to some of the customers in the lounge. Maybe they'll get an idea of how to change their lounge. You almost kind of have to force parts manager and every parts manager at all the dealerships or if you pull them into the drive and you have them speak to a customer, they'll have a better understanding of who they're actually servicing. So when there is that chance to have a customer that's here, you'll know exactly what to do in the case of somebody dropped the ball, but it doesn't really matter. You gotta get this customer. You know, it's almost just like a CSI. That's also going back to the other thing. That's another metric that's not really tracking parts that I feel like it should be is CSI for the parts manager specifically, because that affects how we tailor and change processes in the back to make sure it's easier for literally everyone else.
Because everyone comes to the parts department. I remember just creating like an image of like service, sales, everyone's pulling on the parts department. Okay, so what should not be manual anymore with a well-run parts department? What are some of the things that you guys feel like are just really outdated and still, why are we doing this manual?
I would say something that's very outdated, still done. Technicians coming up with parts requests at the back parts center, right? It's a complete waste of time. A lot of the time, it's a lot of the senior techs doing it, and what a lot of people fail to realize is the junior techs look up to the senior techs. That the junior techs and the senior guys doing it, and they think that's okay. And then it just creates more of a cluster. It creates delays, and so I know that every now and then, you know, there's going to be a special needs customer or part, and they're going to have to come to the back. 100% okay. But typically, like we were talking about earlier, we were saying earlier, when they come to the back, they like to, you know, shoot what's going on, what they did this weekend, and then it goes from being a simple electronic form or a simple parts request to a 45-minute conversation about how much weight they lost, or something along those lines, right? So I think there's a lot of, a lot of times it's overlooked, and there's a lot of bad nurture behavior that kind of gets out of control that leads to a bunch of other things. But just coming to the park counter, just the back end park, and with all the technology we have now, that shouldn't happen. Right? It shouldn't. It should. By the time tech comes, their parts should be pulled and tagged on the one side, so they just go, they get their stuff, and they're on about their day, right? And making money. If they're not installed, they're not making money.
And also, just hearing that too, I feel like you kind of have to have a balance of some culture, because you got to have them, kind of be friends and get along and all that stuff. But I feel like the more successful operations I see, the parts people actually go to the techs. I mean, I know there's technology and communication, but sometimes even printing out the catalog, like, you mean this right? Because there's this left and this is my right. And if anyone understands that, you guys do. So Ferjie, what are some things that you guys do to mitigate that and go to your techs or get them to not come to the counter?
Also, let me preface this by saying we want to be friends with all the techs.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
We like everybody in service, no matter what everybody says. We want to have the water cooling talks. We want to see what's going on in their lives. The biggest thing for me is actually going off of communication is the way that the communication is done is very hard. So going to the technicians, the tech coming over to the room for a specific part to see on the catalog, but everything else I feel like should be automated or something that should be on a program. Okay, so for instance, like I said, our building is split our division is split between 3 buildings, and where the technicians are compared to where the service drive is very far apart. So for a technician to have to go back and forth to speak to the advisor is a driving time. And also too, if the advisor is speaking with the customer, the advisor is not going to tell the customer it doesn't make any sense. So with open communication, it has to be a way to kind of, prioritize or I don't know what's the word, prioritize, I guess. Yeah, to see, okay, so if this one is an emergency, like this technician has parked down, everything's apart, what do we do from this stage? If there is a way to have an open communication with everybody on service or BBC, service and parts, so that way everybody knows what's going on with it, and it's not one of those things where the technician or the advisor had to call the tech, and then they're waiting, and then, what happens? Someone forgets, and then a log is dropped, the part doesn't get ordered, the customer's never called back. So if there's a way to show that when you communicate that there's certain stages during the repair process, internally, we have programs that'll tell the customer like what we're doing, we're currently inspecting the car and sending the videos and everything. But I feel like that's so good that it makes everything on the internal side look really fun. Like there should be a way to track that and keep that within the fixed stop, so that way everybody can see at what stage the vehicle is.
Yeah, so we're doing really good to show the customer, but then the background of steps for you guys, that's what's manual, not totally streamlined.
Yeah, and like things happen, people take days off, people get sick, and then what happens if somebody, like if there's a particular parts person who's working on this job and they're gone for the day, where's the paper trail for the advisor to update the customer? You don't want to make the customer angry. You can try to find it out, but you also don't want to waste their time trying to chase, a job that potentially, costs more than it was worth.
Don't want to be waiting on part, right? Okay, so just kind of some fire round questions as we wrap up. What are some of the biggest mistakes in inventory you guys see at most stores make? Big inventory mistakes. It's hard to talk about mistakes, I know.
What I see in most inventories, including my own, is organization. And you are, as a parts department, you need to be as organized as possible. If everything else is on fire, at least you know this oil filter is in bin 1238. Like, everything should be to the point where everybody knows where it's at. And that's why I was saying, if I, like at my dealership, I have it almost to the point where if I can pull somebody from another department and give them the pull sheet, they'll know exactly where it is because it makes it more efficient on both sides because we have a service split on two sides. And if we're looking for something that, especially that's a special order parts, that's another thing that's really big as far as like all the other subjects we touched, is the process of special order parts. Because if a customer comes in for a special order part, you don't know, that's specific for that person. And if you don't know exactly where it's at, you know, it's pretty much a lost cause because there's no actual location for it. The dollar amount is regardless, it could be clips, it could be an engine. Like if you don't have the right location for it, then it makes everything just delayed. So organization is probably the #1 thing that a lot of parts departments and warehouses, and then I encourage everybody else to just, you know, look at your parts warehouse. Does it look like something where you would be able to find something super easily? Chances are, if you can't find it easily, they can't find it easily. So it's easier for everybody just to have at least some sort of, you know, either number or letter, it might be number or letter, cataloging, so that way you know that, you know, this one is here or this letters. So that way, and also too, if other technicians come in, not to say that the technicians will jump in the back and just grab parts, but they'll know exactly where it's at, so they can also kind of time out their vehicles. Because if a tech gets stuck during the day, and they know they have, you know, this loaf plus this, and then this diagnosis and all that, they can kind of judge and plan around what they're bringing into the shop, so that way they're not, you know, filling up all the racks, and then, you know, they can't do anything without parts for the day. So trying to keep it as organized as possible is probably the biggest thing that everybody needs to work on.
What about when it comes to feedback?
Same thing. Utilizing your DMS is, regardless of which DMS, and I know you have a figure for DMS, regardless of which DMS you use, every person on the counter, at least for parts specifically, needs to take that advantage, take that to their advantage, and learn how to work, not work, but use the system to where it would make sense for everybody else in the counter. Like if somebody's trying to order stuff, let's say they're ordering something aftermarket, and they intake the part and they charge it out on a repair order in a different way than other people do, then that doesn't only make it bad for the technician, that makes it bad for the parts department, because we're the ones keeping track of all of what's going in and what's going out and the dollar amount. And when an owner wants to have a specific question about dollar amounts coming in and out, you want to be able to give them, you know, a pretty accurate number, or at least close to it, and not way off because your process is good. You want to have your processes down enough to where you can, you know, like tell right off the bat where the money's coming in, where the money's coming out.
And I remember when you and I first talked there, it's been like 4 months or so. One of the things I always come across is like when the DMS is set up, I feel like it's never really reviewed or changed after it's set up or converted. Do you find that? I mean, you've been to a couple of deals. I can't remember how long you've been with your location or where you've been. But like,
30.
how often do you make those changes in your inventory strategy and the data and the DMS? Is it like, I feel like it's something that gets set up and then it just, that's the way it is. Great.
Yeah.
Should be looked at quarterly, honestly. Just because, you know, prices change. I mean, it's crazy. We had a giant oil catastrophe a couple years ago that altered a lot of pricing, logistics, all that stuff. And that does also affect not just parts inventory, but also vehicle inventory too. Just trying to figure out, making sure that what we're, again, prices go up, prices go down. You have to be able to keep it as close as you can to make sure that you have, you know, what's best for the business.
We finished on time. 3 seconds early.
Awesome.